Good afternoon, and welcome back to Let's Talk About It, all the things.
Yes.
Happy Wednesday. Whitney and I have a guest today.
We do.
We do.
Yes.
Yes. Welcome to Lori Walton. She is with the Deegan Project. And Lori and I met, not too that long ago, a few months ago. We met and we had breakfast and we talked about our kids, and now she attends my grief support group. And so I just think she's just another person doing amazing things out there, trying to bring some awareness to mental health and suicide prevention. And so we wanted to bring her on just to give another view. So welcome, Lori.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Lori, why don't you go ahead and just kind of run the show today? We just want you to, dive right in. Tell us about Deegan.
So I don't know your story, so tell it as a
Okay.
brand new.
There you go.
So, tell us about Deegan. Deegan was a senior in high school. He loved life. He loved everything with his whole heart. He loved, I'm already going to start getting teary. Here we go.
It's okay.
He loved to laugh. He loved making other people laugh. He was an athlete. He was super smart. He was a hard worker, I would say, when it was something that I want to do this, he was all about it. If he didn't want to do it, not really as much. Deegan, more than anything else, loved, I've been saying since he passed away that he loved all things with a motor, but really I feel like he loved anything that he can make go faster. I said that in grief group last time.
Yep.
And I think that's so true. So Deegan, when he was 13, he fell in love with this car that a friend of ours had. It was a Subaru WRX STI, and Deegan loved this car. He was like, that has to be my car. And so he was very fortunate in that our friend held on to this car for him. And we'd always told the boys, whatever you save for a car, we'll match it when you turn 16. And our older son was like, whatever you give me, I'll take, right? Deegan, once he set eyes on that car, started that moment doing anything he could to buy this car. So he couldn't get a job that summer. He was 13. He tried. So he started doing odd jobs for people, cutting lawns, helping my dad up north. He ended up buying a jet ski on Facebook Marketplace and bringing it home in that winter, like sanding it down, repainting it, new sticker, like really redid this, got it working, and sold it the next summer. He got a job at a golf course the day after he turned 14.
Wow.
Worked that whole summer. He, with the money that he had from the jet ski and working, he put it together with money that he made from working for my dad, and he bought a four-wheeler and used it to plow snow all winter, and then sold it. And then, got another job. He worked for Ace, right? So he kept flipping these things and pooling all this money, and when he was 16, he was like, here's my half.
Oh my gosh.
So he did, 2 days after he turned 16, we went and bought that car. And Deegan was a smiler. He loved laughing, but never have I seen him smile that big driving away in that car. He was so proud. And he, if he was driving this car, he was washing it and waxing it and polishing it before he left.
Oh.
If he took our dog somewhere, he'd take the front seat out of the car, so she had her own special spot. That's Deegan's other dog, our dog. But a week before Deegan passed away, he pulled up in the driveway in his car right after we had gotten home. We were out on our boat, my husband and I, and he comes into the house and he says, I need you to come outside. Well, the last time Deegan said that to me, there was a motorcycle outside that he bought on Facebook Marketplace. And my boys knew that if you are living in my house, you cannot have a motorcycle. So I was like, no, like, this better not be yours. It was his. I was like, you have till Friday to sell it. I will sell it. So he sold it. And then brought home another motorcycle, but that's a different story. So when he came in that day, I thought he was doing something. I was like, I'm not doing this again. And when I turned around, the look on his face, I was like, okay. And I got in his car and we drove. He drove us to the end of our street. And I was like, you need to slow down. Like, this is our subdivision. He turned the car around. He put the car in park. And he turned to me. And I have never seen Deegan in my entire life as broken as he was that day. He reached for me, unbuckled his seatbelt and reached for me. And he was like, Mom, I need help. Like, I'm so sad and I'm so depressed all the time. He said, the only time I'm happy is when I'm at work. He talked about, so Deegan had been, this is a sensitive part of Deegan's story for a lot of reasons, but Deegan had been talking to a girl that he very much cared about. Since Deegan's death, I will leave that part separate, but at any rate, he's dating this girl, or they're friends, and they're doing things that are date-like, I don't know, but he very much cares for her. And at the beginning of the school year, it's homecoming, right? And so I'm asking him, Deegan, are you guys going to homecoming? Deegan, like, don't wait till the last minute and tell me that you need clothes. So here it is 2 weeks before homecoming, and he says, we're not going to go together. And he's going to go with his friend. So he tells me in the car that night that the night before, he'd asked to have friends over. Absolutely. So he's got a group of friends over. They're going to spend the night. And I hear Deegan come upstairs in the middle of the night and go into his bedroom, which is weird because all of your friends are here. Like, why are they all sleeping in the basement and you're up here? And he said that night in the car, a friend of his that he's been friends with since first grade had a bonfire. They grew up together. They did all the things together. They were buddies. And they had grown, apart, but they're still part of the same group. And he had a bonfire on this particular day. And he said they invited everyone to that bonfire except me. And they watched me come home that night from work and drive past them. And no one texted me to say, hey, come on over, nothing. Because the boy invited the girl to homecoming. And she agreed to go. And Deegan was crushed, I think, not just at the fact that they were going to homecoming together, but I think he was crushed to be ostracized intentionally by people that he felt were his friends. I said, Deegan, did they tell you that? Did someone tell you that last night? He said, no, they were all making jokes, and I connected the dots. And he and I talked a little bit longer in the car. They just bought tickets to go to Zach Bryan together. And in my mind, I feel like this is a group of kids that, they're friends and they're doing all the things. And how did you go from 2 weeks ago, you bought tickets to a concert and now everything is exploding? And he talked about how his friends felt like he didn't want to do anything with them all summer. Deegan, when I talk about the fact that he was a hard worker, we always assumed our kids would go to college. Deegan was a straight A kid. He was on the honor roll. He was dual enrolled at U of M. So when he came to me and said, I'm not going to college, I was like, yeah, you are. But as he gives his case, it makes sense. What he's saying makes sense. He's like, Mom, everyone I know that is an engineer hates their job. Right, you are. I can't sit at a desk. So my husband introduces him to a friend of a friend who owns a fabrication shop and has made it to a place where he gets to work with some pretty impressive clients. And Chris took him there one night and he wanted him to see, like, is this really what you want to do? And Deegan was like, yes. I remember him coming home that night feeling like, if that was meant to deter me, it didn't work. A couple of weeks later, he needed someone to help in his shop. And I remember my husband reaching out to him and they agreed to try. Deegan was only 16 at the time. So later, after Deegan passed away, Andy, his boss, will tell the story. He says, he called and said, would you consider my son? And they were like, I don't want to babysit your 16-year-old kid, right? Like, so they agreed to trial him for 2 weeks. And Andy says, I was blown away by what he could do. I was blown away how hard he worked, at the level of skill that he had. So that summer, he didn't spend a lot of time with his friends. He worked Monday through Friday, all day there. And he loved what he was doing. So he did throw himself into his work. But we bought this boat at the beginning of the summer feeling like it'll be something for us to do with the kids. They're riding jet skis. We'll it's going to be great. Any spare time that he had, he spent with the girl and loved it. He was very smitten by her, I think. And so he talks about these things in the car that night, and it's been about an hour that we've been talking, and I looked at him and I said, Deegan, would you like to take a mental health day tomorrow? And this is on a Sunday, and you can just see the stress melt off of him. And he's like, yes. And so he didn't go to school on Monday. On Tuesday, I messaged him around lunchtime and I said, do you want me to bring you lunch? And he's like, no. I said, how are things going? He's like, fine, I'm just minding my own business. So we talked when he got home. He's wearing earbuds to school so that when he's sitting at the table with his friends, he doesn't have to acknowledge that they aren't acknowledging him. And thinking about that crushed my soul. Like, thinking of him, no mom wants to think of their kid hurting, right? But just thinking of him sitting there with a group of people that he thinks are his friends, or he feels are his friends, or whatever the case is, it crushed me. And so the next day he went to school, and Wednesday, how did it go? Same. Thursday, he comes home and he's smiling again. And I was like, hey, how was school today? It was great. So-and-so talked to me. And I was like, all right. It turned out that a friend said hello to him. And because he had his earbuds in, he didn't hear him. So the friend reaches out to him and he's like, hey, like, I said hi to you and you didn't say anything. Is everything okay? And that was enough to just bring Deegan's spirits back up, to feel like there's someone that cares about him. And I remember asking him, like, why don't you just sit with Deegan was friends with a lot of different groups of kids. Why don't you just sit with your other friends? He's like, I can't. They're not in the same lunch as me. So that Thursday night, he says, Mom, there is what's called a drag and drive event. And so this is where racers go from, it's a weekend event, and you go from track to track to track, racing by elimination. And I'm probably screwing up the description of it. So there that is. You can have one person that can work on your car. So if something breaks, you can have one person that's allowed to fix. And this guy chose Deegan. Deegan helped to build his truck. They kind of formed a cool relationship, and he chose Deegan to work on his truck. But the race starts on Friday. He's like, please, can I skip school tomorrow? And I was like, you just missed on Monday. But because he's enrolled in U of M classes, they don't have class on Friday. So he's got 2 high school classes. Yep, you can skip. So he did, and he went to this race, and he had a great time. He texted me videos of it, and thanks for letting me skip school, Mom. And Saturday is homecoming. And he didn't go, and we took him to a movie that day just to try to kind of keep his mind off of it. He wanted to go to after the bonfire at their friend's house where all the kids are going. And he said, Mom, I'm going to ask you something. He's like, hear me out, which is like immediately no, right? This new motorcycle that he has brought home is his dad's drag bike from when we first started dating. He has tracked it down through Facebook Marketplace at least 10 years later. I don't know how, and brought this bike home. So knowing that we wouldn't be able to say no to that one, right? He wants to ride this bike, and I am like, you're really pushing the envelope here, kid. And so we agreed, Dad will follow you. He was like, no, Mom. No will no, right? You'll pull into the driveway, off he'll go. And so he did. And he came back home like half an hour later on the bike. He goes back in his car, and like half an hour later, he comes back in his car. And by now it's like 1 a.m, and he's talking on the phone to the girl. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're a 17-year-old kid. Who talks on the phone, much less for that long? And he comes inside, and I'm like, are you good? Yep, I'm good. And the next morning, he's supposed to go out on the boat with us. And we wake up, and he's awake, and he's smiling, and we're joking, and, okay, you gonna come out on the boat with us? Mom, I've got an AP exam tomorrow. I have to study. We were like, just bring it on the boat, study with us. No, I can't. If I come out on the boat, I'm not going to get anything done. So he's got his books all spread out from the night before. And all right, so we leave, and we're going to Lake St. Clair. So about an hour away from where we are. We put the boat in the water, and we were probably about 45 minutes into our trip, and I get a text message from Libby, who is Christopher's girlfriend of almost 6 years now. She is like Deegan's big sister, and she said, hey, is Deegan okay? And my heart dropped, and I was like, what do you mean, is he okay? And she says, he just texted me. I don't want to share what was in her text because that's her story to tell, but Libby was the one the week before who said, you have to talk to your mom. You have to tell your mom how you're feeling, or I will. And so feeling like, I feel like in that moment, you don't want to believe the worst. And so I'm texting him. I need to talk to you. I need you to call me. I'm calling him. He's not answering. My text messages they're not going through. They're coming back green. So I know that he's not getting them. We follow him. We use an app, Life 360. He is in a location, but he's not moving. And we can tell. We log into Apple. He's same. And so we are feeling like he's turned his location services off. And I'm panicking. I was like, I don't want to call the police, because if I call the police, he's going to text me back and be like, I was in the bathroom, like, calm down. And so I text him. I was like, look, you have 3 minutes to call me, or I'm calling the police. And when he didn't immediately call me back, I did call the police. And they were like, well, okay, but what do you want us to do? And I mean, right, I like saying that out loud. Then in that moment, I was like, I mean, they're right. But I don't know where he is. So Libby was out of town. Her sister was out of town. Her mom said, I will go look for him. Where do you think he would? I don't know where he would go. Deegan isn't like, hey, I'm gonna go to the lake and think. He's not that kid. And so when I'm telling them on the phone, I said, look, this is his car, this is his license plate, this is where I can last see him on location services. Okay, we'll watch out for him. And I told Libby's mom the same thing. This is the last place I can see him, is Davisburg Road. And we just turned around and we're going back as fast as we can in our boat. And I remember my husband has navigated this lake. He's comfortable with where he's going in the lake. And he got to the point where he stopped and he was so discombobulated, feeling like I have no idea where we are. Reoriented himself, and we finally make it back to almost to the dock, and Libby's mom calls me and she's sobbing on the other end of the phone, and she's like, they have Davisburg Road closed. And in hindsight, I feel like, duh. But I will tell you that in that moment, I believed that, like you see in the movies, like they're waiting for the mom and dad to come and they're going to talk him off the ledge and he's going to be fine and they're going to get help. And we kept calling his friends, their parents, like, we live in a small town, right? Everyone knows everyone. Our friends, my parents, our family, anyone that we can to go and look for him. And once she said the road was closed, she said they won't tell anyone anything until the parents come. And I can't see anything because it's at a point in the road where the road is curving. So it's blocked on this end and blocked on this end, and you can't see anything, which is for the best. We finally got the boat out of the water and we drove home, which was awful. We knew that we needed to stop for gas and we were afraid to stop for gas. We called twice, both in Macomb County and Oakland County, to see if we could get a sheriff to escort us, and they couldn't. We didn't stop for gas because we wanted to get to our son. We, like a quarter of a mile from where we needed to be, ran out of gas towing a boat, so that was awesome. And I called to our friend that I knew was there, and she came to pick us up, and we turned around, and I remember Chris getting out of the car. He didn't even have shoes on. His shoes were still in the boat, and running before the car is even stopped. And so I get out of the car, and there is our friends and family are all there, and watching, like, so many things looking back. I feel like you knew, right? But I will tell you that wholeheartedly, until someone told me my son was gone, I believed that he was alive and okay. And as my husband is running, there's a fireman blocking the road, and he stops my husband, says, "You can't go back there." And my husband says, "That's my son. They're waiting for us." And the fireman said, "I don't know who your son is, but whoever was in that car is deceased." And so that's how we found out that Deegan was gone. And I mean, then your life falls apart from there. It's pretty much the end. I mean, that's the end of his story that day. But we made it so that that won't be the end of his story, I think.
Wow.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
sharing,
that's a lot for you.
Deegan.
It's,
It is a lot. I remember hugging my husband that day in the street and opening my eyes over his shoulder and watching one of Deegan's very best friends standing there with his parents, looking at me, watching me find out that my son was gone. And I knew in that moment that the way that I reacted was going to matter to these kids. And our house was filled with them. I remember that night not sleeping and staring at the ceiling, and I remember my husband saying, "Are we ever going to sleep again?" And then the next day, all the kids are there, and they're laughing, and they're telling stories about Deegan, and it's great, and it's amazing, and there's one group of kids who are not there, and it's the obvious group, right? And I know that it is because they are carrying a different weight. I know that it's because they don't know where we stand. And I honestly, I will tell you that I was angry. And I think that at that time, in a moment like that, you need someone to be angry at or something to be angry at. And my son, Christopher, said, "Mom, they're 17 years old. I've said heinous things to my friends, and then they say things back, and then we're friends again." And it dawned on me that when I was 17 years old, I probably did things that looking back, I would think, "You're a jerk." You don't always get the girl, right? And that's okay. And so finally, these kids were able to come over and be part of this group. And it felt amazing to see. It sounds arrogant when I say I feel like they needed my forgiveness, but that I don't mean it that way at all. I mean that I think that they needed to hear at 17 years old that this is where you make mistakes and learn from them. That I don't think that Deegan's death is your fault. And it was good to have them as part of the group. I hadn't met the girl before. So, oh, you know what? I had met her briefly at a farmer's market. But this is the first time that I really got to know her like Deegan did. So I think that the role that they played and still play in our grief journey is important. They keep us laughing. They keep Deegan's memory alive. It makes me very sad that I will just be very transparent that since Deegan's story was published, things have very much changed. There were kids who knew that Deegan was going to do that. He had talked about it. They didn't know on that day that that's what was going to happen. So Deegan drove his car into a tree. The police estimated that he was traveling between 150 and 170 miles per hour. There were no skid marks. And I didn't see the car. I have not seen my son since I kissed him goodbye that morning, which was our choice. The nurse in me knew that I didn't want to see that. But I completely lost where I was going with that.
It's okay. So it's a lot.
It is a lot, but my point, we were talking about the fact that the kids knew, right? That Deegan had expressed these feelings before, and had specifically designated that tree before.
And none of those kids thought to talk to you or talk to their
Mhm.
parents about it, or
How long have they? Did they tell you how long they knew about it?
They said that Deegan started making these comments in March. But I get that. I get it. Is maybe it's naive of me. I don't know, but I feel like at 17 you share secrets and you keep each other's secrets and you feel like there are times now that kids will share with me that that's how they're feeling, and I have to navigate as a grown woman how do I manage this? How do I approach their parent without their parent thinking this crazy lady thinks that everyone's going to tell themselves now because her kid did? No, your kid's verbalizing that to me, and I wish that someone would have told me that. So I can see where they would have not said anything. Maybe they thought he wasn't being serious. Maybe they thought I've talked him down, so he's good. But one of the kids said, when they said Davisburg Road was closed, I knew exactly what happened. And it broke my heart for him. When I wrote Deegan's story, I approached the kids that knew that happened, because I feel like the reaction that you had is a very common reaction. People think, what do you mean you didn't say anything? They didn't. And I promise you those kids wish they would have and have learned a lesson. Life teaches you lessons that are really hard sometimes. But I reached out to their parents and I said, hey, I'm writing this. I would like it. Would you like to read it before? Some did, some did not. But they were like, our kids don't need to read that. You can put it out there. And when I did, there were a couple of parents that reached out not in a not so kind manner. And sadly, it has drastically changed the relationship between that group of kids and our family. And it makes me very sad. It makes me very sad that those things I don't hear about Deegan anymore. It makes me sad that people refer to it as your version of Deegan's story, when truly this is Deegan's version of Deegan's story. These are the words that are coming from Deegan's mouth. Had Deegan not talked to me in the car that day, I would have had no idea what happened. I would have had my kid just drove his car. I would have had, he was smiling and laughing all the time. Never would I have guessed had we not had that conversation. So it makes me very sad to, one of the moms flat out called me a liar.
whoa.
She said, I don't want to call you a liar, but okay, well,
You did.
that's calling me a liar.
Yeah, you just did.
And so when I said, what part of the story did you find to be untrue? Because this is Deegan's story, right? From Deegan's mouth. Maybe there are things that happened that weren't part of what he verbalized or part of what was important to him. But when I asked the question, well, it isn't that it was untrue. It's just that, well, now people know. That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
That is the point. Like, my 17-year-old son is gone. I'm sorry that makes you sad that people now know his story. The only good that can come out of this is that other people start to look for those signs. They start to look behind the smile, or they know to tell someone if they feel like their friend is having these feelings. That other people who are feeling like Deegan feel like, it's okay that I feel this way. I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. It's okay if I reach out to people. That is the point of the story, that everyone knows. Your kids weren't named in the story. And so anyone who knows that that was your kid, that character in the story is your child already knew.
Yep.
And frankly, they probably already know more than we know.
Oh, for sure they do. Yep.
So it makes me sad that you know, people in the community know now. I want people all over the world to know now. Like, are you really more worried about your reputation than the fact that this isn't a Deegan thing? This truly is an epidemic in our country. And I think it's an epidemic that no one talks about. So yes, I want all the people to know.
Well, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
all of that.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I want to transition a little bit now because now we know Deegan's story and it's out there. And you have now started the Deegan Project. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how that came about and, what made you decide on a nonprofit and because, that's big and scary.
Crazy.
Yeah, yes, we are. And, I guess tell us a little bit about what the Deegan Project is. Like, what are your goals? What are you doing?
So I'll start by saying that the Deegan Project is in its infancy. So we're still trying to navigate all of this because it's exploded far faster than I ever would have expected. It started with a TikTok video. I'd used TikTok. I had no idea how to make a video. So Libby showed me how. And I made a video about losing my son. If I remember, the text said, my 17-year-old son lost a battle with depression. We didn't even know he was fighting. And I was like, haha, my video got hundreds of views. And I remember reaching a point where I was like, oh my gosh, like we have 30,000 followers. Or I'm sorry, 30,000 views on TikTok. Like what is happening? We have now reached over 13 million people across the world. People have messaged us from all over the world, and it is amazing. We've had people that have said, if I didn't see your message, today was my day. I would have never thought that my mom would feel that way, which is mind-boggling.
Right.
But, as this is growing, my husband is like, do you want to like really do this? Like, do you want to start a nonprofit? And I was like, I don't know anything about doing a nonprofit. And he was like, we didn't know how to do any of this. We'll figure it out. And so we have. We registered our nonprofit in February, and we're waiting for our 501 paperwork to continue going through. But we started the Deegan Project because we want to educate people. We want people to understand that if you're not feeling okay, it's okay, and that you're not alone by any means. We wanted people to be able to have resources that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. So you have people that have private insurance, and you have people that are covered by things like, Common Ground does community care for kids that don't have any insurance, but then you have kids that also fall through the cracks who maybe don't come from a home where their parents would reach out to something like Common Ground, but they could use therapy and they're reaching out for help. I want the Deegan Project to be able to connect those kids with the services that they need. And I will tell you that more than anything, when they finally cleared the road that day, there was car parts as far as you could see. The big stuff was cleared and his car was gone, but someone gave me the gear shifter. And all I could think was, this is the last thing that my kid touched. But I'm thankful for it. And people started leaving things, things that they remembered Deegan by, or things, flowers, and someone left this stuffed bear. And to this day, I mean, I put it on social media. I have put it on out to our community. I've asked the kids, and no one knows who left this bear. And it had a paper and a plastic sheet pinned to it. And it said, "Please don't give up. What if tomorrow is the day that you wake up and that's the day that everything changes? Tomorrow needs you." And I remember picking that bear up and sobbing, feeling like I wish that Deegan could have read this, because maybe it would have made a difference. And so I think that overall, I want people to know that there's hope in tomorrow.
What an impactful statement on that bear.
Yes,
Yep.
very much.
Yep. It is. I don't know who wrote that, but it made me wonder, like, did you come from the same place that Deegan was? Did you know that all of those kids at that tree needed to hear it? It was the beginning of October, so it's raining and not raining and raining, and I would go and pick that bear up if it rained and bring it home and take it back and put it at the tree when it stopped raining. Someone found a wooden high chair somewhere and brought it and put the bear in it.
Oh.
And there he still sits in Deegan's room in that high chair. So yeah, I think that is a powerful message, and I think I will share Deegan's story to as many people as I can through the Deegan Project, and hope that I can spread that message to as many people as I can.
Absolutely. So on TikTok, where can people find?
The Deegan Project, or Deeg and 401's Ma. So 401 was Christopher's baseball number. So I've combined the two of them. But if you just search the Deegan Project on any social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you'll find us.
Awesome.
Or thedeeganproject.com also, where you can
Excellent.
follow my nuggets of wisdom on my blog.
I was going to say, so you started a blog too. I read the first one. I don't know how many you've written.
There are 4.
Ooh, so I'm really behind. Okay.
Get
Yeah.
with it, Chris.
I know, geez.
Nothing else to do.
But I read the first one for sure. Okay, so your blog is also on your website. Okay, so people can find that. I love blogs because it's therapy for us as grievers, right?
Very much so.
But yeah, I think we're helping so many people by putting it out there, right? Because we're making it okay to put all those things out there, and it makes it okay for people to feel, right?
All the feels.
All the feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is why so many people relate to us on TikTok. 15,000 people do follow me. 13,000? I don't remember, somewhere around there. 16, whatever. Because I said it first. So now it's okay to say me too.
Yeah.
And I think that's why kids feel comfortable coming to us, because we said it first.
Yeah.
I'm not judging you. Which is really sad.
It is really sad. Well, I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the more we can educate, the more we can break the stigma, make it okay. We need kids to know that it's okay to not be okay, but that they really do need to reach out. There's
There's a lot out there that are doing the same thing you're doing or feeling.
Yes.
So yes, you're not alone.
I feel like more people that we have talked to since Deegan died have struggled with their mental health, have been suicidal, have lost someone to suicide, know someone that struggles, than people that don't.
Absolutely. And do you find too, when Nikolai died, like I had never really given suicide a thought, not even a second thought. And then when he died, you're right. Like it was just like all of a sudden, just people were,
Out of the woodwork.
yeah, literally coming out of the woodwork and we're, starting to talk about it. And I was like, wow, like it's literally impacts everyone. I almost feel like at this point, somebody knows someone who has lost someone to suicide, whether you've been personally really impacted or whether you know somebody's been personally impacted.
I agree. And I have probably a different perspective because I was a bedside pediatric trauma nurse for 8 years. And so I did recognize clearly not all of the signs to look for. Clearly not. I think one of the biggest takeaways I hope people have is that depression doesn't always look the way that you think that it might. I think that more often than people think, it's hidden behind a smile.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I would 100% agree with that.
Just thinking of I'm sorry, I just can't get over. I see his smile in my head, and I hear his laughter in my head, and I think, how did I miss that? I missed it because he wanted me to miss it.
Yep. Absolutely. They always put on a big brave face, right? Everything's fine, everything's great, I'm fine. And
That was one of my TikToks of the boy who is fine.
Yep. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, really appreciate you sharing that story.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And make sure that you check out the Deegan Project. And if you're on TikTok, fortunately am not on TikTok.
Oh, come on, Chris.
I'll just start finding them.
I keep waiting every time you put something out on Instagram or Facebook. That's when I see it. But yeah, I am unfortunately not on TikTok, but I have seen a couple of the things that you've posted, and yeah, I can see where. It's amazing work. And so I encourage all of our listeners, viewers, to check out the Deegan Project, follow her on TikTok,
Yes.
and share the TikTok, please, because you just never know who is struggling out there. And the more we can get it out there and reach people, the better. So make sure that you share. So,
Certainly.
anything else, Whitney?
I don't have anything else. Anything else you would like to share?
Yep, I think we covered all the things.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Lori. We appreciate you coming in. All right. Catch everyone on the flip side. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are just your friends. Whitney and I are not licensed therapists, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.